This is A News. I'm Dr. Sonwa, and let's go through the main headlines. Violence in Lebanon continues after the extension of a ceasefire agreement with Israel. The World Health Organization has declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. And the World Urban Forum starts in Azerbaijan. A recently extended ceasefire arrangement between Israel and Lebanon is already coming under renewed strain as violence continues despite diplomatic efforts to keep it in place. While talks in Washington have offered some hope of easing tensions, recent developments are raising new questions about how stable the situation is.
Freshly extended ceasefire talks between Israel and Lebanon were quickly overshadowed by a deadly Israeli strike in southern Lebanon that has raised doubts over whether the agreement can hold. Lebanon's health ministry says 6 people were killed in the attack, including 3 paramedics working at a health center in the town of Haruf. A 4th paramedic was critically injured after the civil defense center was hit. The Israeli military says it targeted and killed 2 Hezbollah members, describing them as terrorists, and added that steps were taken to avoid civilian casualties. The strike came only a day after talks in Washington concluded on Friday, with both sides agreeing to extend the ceasefire for another 45 days and hold further meetings in the coming weeks. The latest negotiations were the 3rd round of talks since Israel stepped up airstrikes after Hezbollah launched missiles into Israel on March 2nd. President Donald Trump first announced the ceasefire on April 16th, but despite the agreement, exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah have continued almost every day. Even so, many Lebanese residents in Beirut say on Saturday they welcome the extension, hoping it could eventually lead to lasting peace after decades of conflict.
Of course, with peace. Definitely with peace, 1,000,000%. Nobody loves war. All these people who died, the children, nobody is in favor of war. But you want lasting peace. But for me, it's too late. This peace has cost so many lives, destruction and suffering.
We accept that this ceasefire would definitely lead to a real ceasefire in the south because what's happening is heartbreaking. This destruction and devastation that's taking place isn't for Lebanon, it's for foreign agendas. We've reached a point where, after 40 years, the state's decision-making has to return to the state, and the Lebanese people should live the way they deserve to live.
Lebanon says nearly 2,951 people have been killed and close to 9,000 wounded in Israeli strikes since early March. The latest developments reflect both the uncertainty surrounding the ceasefire and the hope that continued talks could help prevent a wider escalation.
Displaced families in Gaza are reporting worsening living conditions inside overcrowded shelters. UN agencies say rodent infestations are adding to already dire humanitarian challenges.
Thousands of displaced families in Gaza are struggling with worsening infestations of rats and insects as overcrowded conditions and collapsed sanitation systems fuel a growing health crisis, UN agencies said on Friday. Residents living in tents and damaged buildings say rodents are entering shelters daily, contaminating food supplies and, in some cases, biting or scratching children at night. Many families say they are forced to stay awake to protect their children and what little food they have.
The issue of rats has existed since the first day this camp was established, but now rodents are spreading among the tents in an abnormal way. Every time we get rid of one rat, we find 10 more. Their numbers are increasing dramatically, and we have no solutions.
2 weeks ago, rats entered our tent, and my child was scratched. I woke up to his screaming and crying. We are suffering greatly because of the rats. During the evening hours, my children are afraid to go to the bathroom because it feels as though the rats live among us. Every morning I wake up to find rat droppings everywhere.
The crisis comes as most of Gaza's population remains displaced amid widespread destruction of infrastructure, including sewage and waste systems, with humanitarian conditions continuing to deteriorate despite ongoing ceasefire efforts.
The World Health Organization has declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda an international health emergency, warning the virus poses a growing threat beyond the affected regions.
The World Health Organization has declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda a public health emergency of international concern, warning of a growing risk of regional spread. The outbreak is caused by the Bundibugyo strain of the Ebola virus, which spreads through direct contact with infected bodily fluids and can trigger severe hemorrhagic fever. The WHO says the outbreak does not meet the criteria for a pandemic emergency under international health regulations, but described the situation as an extraordinary event requiring urgent international coordination. As of Saturday, authorities had recorded 8 laboratory-confirmed cases, 246 suspected infections and 80 suspected deaths in DR Congo's Ituri province, across the health zones of Bunia, Rwampara and Mongwalu. Uganda has confirmed 2 Ebola cases in Kampala involving travelers arriving from DR Congo, while another confirmed infection was detected in Kinshasa. The WHO says the outbreak could be significantly larger than current figures suggest, citing unexplained community deaths, infections among healthcare workers and limited understanding of transmission links. The agency warned that population movement, insecurity in eastern Congo and weak healthcare systems are increasing the risk of further spread across neighboring countries. Unlike some other Ebola strains, there are currently no approved vaccines or therapeutics specifically targeting the Bundibugyo virus. The WHO is urging countries to strengthen surveillance, expand testing and increase cross-border screening efforts to contain the outbreak.
Ukraine says Russian forces carried out a series of strikes on the northeastern city of Sumy on Sunday, hitting multiple locations with what officials describe as attack drones. The state emergency service said rescuers were deployed across 4 separate sites after the strikes, working to assess damage and to assist the residents. According to officials, the attacks damaged residential buildings, shattered windows in apartment blocks, and destroyed civilian vehicles, while a shopping center was also affected. Fire safety measures were carried out in some areas where small fires were reported following the impact. Authorities say emergency teams remain on the ground as they continue to deal with the aftermath of the overnight strikes. Meanwhile, US and British troops in Lithuania have joined industry experts to test new systems aimed at countering the growing drone threat. Our report brings more.
NATO forces have tested new counter-drone technology at a training area in Lithuania as allied armies adapt to the growing threat from unmanned aircraft. The exercise, known as Project Flytrap 5.0, brought US and British troops together with industry experts at the Pabrade training area. Soldiers operated first-person view drones, tested jamming devices, and used detection systems mounted on armored vehicles. The drills focused on low-cost ways to disrupt, disable, or destroy drones in realistic field conditions.
There's no one solution for counter-UAS, and instead, it really requires a multi-layered counter-UAS approach, bringing together a lot of different sensors, effectors, together to provide a holistic kind of protective array for our soldiers.
King said traditional battlefield skills are becoming even more important as drones make troop movements easier to detect.
Soldier fundamentals still matter, and I would argue that they matter even more now. Simple things like employing camouflage, digging a fighting position, using different amounts of multispectral ways to hide yourself have become even more important as the battlefield becomes more and more transparent.
The exercise also looked at how commanders handle large amounts of drone and sensor data during operations. King warned that soldiers on the ground face a growing risk of information overload, making network systems a key focus of the project.
We see that for leaders on the ground, there's an increasing threat of cognitive overload, where they're seeing so much information and it's hard to understand what's important, what's not, when I should act versus when I should not. And so with that, one of the key focuses for Project Flytrap is really on our network.
Results from the training are expected to help shape future counter-drone capabilities across US and allied forces.
A man drove into pedestrians in the northern Italian city of Modena on Saturday, injuring at least 8 people, 4 seriously, according to police. The driver crashed into a shop window after hitting the crowd and then tried to flee the scene. He was stopped by bystanders and allegedly injured one person with a knife before being arrested. Authorities said he had been receiving psychiatric treatment, while the motive remains under investigation. 2 of the seriously injured were airlifted to hospital in Bologna. After a heavy night at the Eurovision Song Contest 2026, Bulgaria has claimed its first ever victory in the competition, with Dara winning the title following the country's return to Eurovision after a 3-year absence.
Bulgaria has been crowned winner of Eurovision 2026 for the first time in the country's history. Bulgaria returned to the concert this year, and what a way they did it, winning both the jury and the televote. The first time since 2017 that a country has managed to do this. Now, this is very much a shock win. It's fair to say the bookies had it between Finland and Australia, but nope. Bulgaria, with their innovative choreography, with their staging, swept away both the juries and the televote. They were not even on the bookies' top 10 last week, but it was as we saw that performance in the semi-final that they rose above the odds and people started talking about Dara more and more. Now, I have been speaking to Bulgarian Eurovision fans and journalists about how it feels to see their country win the contest for the first time.
It still feels like a miracle, like a dream. I'm gonna take a few hours to realize that this is actually happening. It's just an amazing feeling that I cannot compare to anything else.
Literally, I have no words to describe how this will unite our country finally, because we have been divided, we have been, not united for so long, but when we unite, we fight and we win the battle.
I can't describe this. It's the first time Bulgaria wins the Eurovision Song Contest on our return. For us, it's a huge opportunity that we are participating at all. So the fact that we returned with a very talented and well-known artist and an amazing song, an even more spectacular performance. This is everything you could ask for from your country at Eurovision.
Now we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. 13th World Urban Forum has officially started in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, with a ministerial meeting on the new urban agenda. The meeting opened with remarks from the UN Habitat Executive Director and Azerbaijan's Urban Planning Committee Chairman, setting the stage for global discussions on housing, urban transformation and the future of cities. Our Nuray Mustafa has more.
Events held within the framework of World Urban Forum 13 officially kicked off in Baku today. The forum is jointly organized by UN Habitat and the government of Azerbaijan. On the first day of the forum, Azerbaijan is chairing the ministerial meeting on the new urban agenda.
This World Urban Forum has a clear focus on housing. So we expect, after this couple of days here in Baku, to come up with policies, with solutions at all levels to address the crisis that people are facing all over the world. People living in informal settlements, people that have no money to buy or to rent a house, and people that are living on the streets. That's what we expect at this World Urban Forum, and that we have a big coalition to address this crisis, because we need everybody. We need the private sector, we need the civil society, we need the local authorities, and the national strong policies.
That vision is more urgent today than forum in Baku is following traditions established on previous forums. But meanwhile, we've tried, and I believe we're successful, to introduce some new elements. We have leaders segment, we have bigger ministerial meeting, and several more initiatives which will be presented during Forum Days.
Introduced as a new initiative within the World Urban Forum program, the meeting aims to assess the work carried out midway through the 20-year implementation period of new urban agenda, identify existing challenges and discuss priorities for the next stage.
The discussions in Baku are key because these will be taken to the United Nations meeting in July, where the midterm review of the new urban agenda will be taking place. So this new review is looking at 2036 from 2026. So as the Director General of UN Habitat said here, it's not only a moment to review, but also to correct trajectory, because you have to incorporate resilience, you have to incorporate dignity, justice in housing, and housing is at the base of human rights.
This forum is extremely important because it brings together most of the world's nations to discuss issues related to urbanization, urban planning and development. But above all, the central theme is housing the world. Housing the world means ensuring that every citizen has access to decent shelter. This highlights the fact that urbanization must take into account the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the commitments made by African states during the Nairobi Forum last month.
It's emphasized that the meeting serves as an important platform for strengthening international cooperation in this field of urban planning and sustainable development.
Within the framework of the World Urban Forum 13, Slovakia's Minister of Investments, Regional Development and Informatization, Samuel Miguel, held a bilateral meeting with Azerbaijan's chairman of the State Committee on Urban Planning and Architecture, Anar Guliyev. Our correspondent Nuray Mustafa had the opportunity to speak with Samuel Miguel about the outcomes of the meeting.
It's very good context between the Slovakia and Azerbaijan, because we are expect great position between the countries in energy topics, because it's very important for Slovakia, and in the other agenda, especially in informatization, regional development, and it's a lot of topics where we can find the contribution between the countries.
Amid rising pressure on cities from rapid urbanization, climate change and housing shortages, global attention is once again turning to urban solutions. The World Urban Forum opens this week as a key UN platform, bringing these discussions to global stage.
Cities are increasingly at the centre of global action on climate change, housing and sustainable development. And one of the key platforms shaping that conversation opens this week. The World Urban Forum, established by the United Nations in 2001 and first held in 2002 in Nairobi, Kenya, was created in response to rapid global urbanization and the growing need for coordinated action on challenges facing cities. These include issues such as housing, infrastructure, inequality and climate resilience. Unlike formal UN negotiations, WUF does not produce binding decisions or resolutions. Instead, it serves as a global ideas and dialogue platform where governments, city leaders, experts and civil society come together to exchange solutions and build partnerships. It also supports the implementation of the new urban agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities. The latest edition, WUF 12, took place in 2024 in Cairo, Egypt, focusing on practical local responses to global urban challenges, including housing, climate action, financing and digital transformation.
Tom rightly puts it. It all starts at home. Real progress begins at the local level, on the ground, in communities and people's lives. World leaders have just adopted the Pact for the Future. It's an important new tool to advance our vital work accelerate the SDGs, and address inequalities.
WUF 13 opens this weekend in Baku, Azerbaijan, under the theme Housing the World, Safe and Resilient Cities and Communities. The session will place a strong focus on the global housing crisis and how cities can respond with more inclusive, resilient and sustainable urban development as the world moves closer to the 2030 SDG deadline. Over time, WUF has become one of the world's largest urban gatherings, shaping global thinking on cities and sustainable development, even without producing formal agreements.
Iran and Pakistan agreed to strengthen border trade and security cooperation on Saturday. The agreement came during talks held in Tehran between the two countries' interior ministers. Both sides discussed boosting economic ties and improving border facilities, with officials describing relations as friendly and focused on practical cooperation. The talks come amid Islamabad's efforts to support regional dialogue involving Washington and Tehran. Up to 40% of water in Central Asia is being lost before it even reaches users. As climate change accelerates glacier melt and outdated infrastructure struggles to cope, officials meeting in Dushanbe are warning of growing risks to food and water security. Farisa Kalumrisina reports.
Central Asia is losing up to 40% of its water before it even reaches farms and communities. That warning came from Dushanbe during the 35th Regional Conference of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, where officials said the region is moving deeper into water stress. The problem is growing fast. Climate change is shrinking glaciers, while outdated irrigation systems continue to waste huge amounts of water. Across parts of the region, water is still being lost through leaking canals and worn-out infrastructure. In some cases, losses reach as high as 55%. The pressure is becoming increasingly visible. Over the past 2 decades, glaciers in the western Tian Shan have shrunk by around 27%, reaching one of Central Asia's key freshwater sources. And the numbers already point to a wider problem. According to the Eurasian Development Bank, water availability per person in Central Asia has nearly halved since the Soviet period, falling from around 3,500 cubic meters to just over 1,700 by 2020. But this is not only about agriculture. Nearly 10 million people across the region still do not have access to safe drinking water, while aging water and sanitation systems remain under growing strain. In response, officials in Dushanbe announced the plans to launch a regional center focused on climate-smart seed production and agricultural biodiversity. The aim is to develop crops that can better survive drought, rising soil salinity and long-term water shortages. Experts warn that without urgent investment in water infrastructure and better regional cooperation, Central Asia could face not only lower harvests, but growing risk to food security. Farisa Kalimursina, Almaty, A News.
Azerbaijani servicemen are taking part in the ongoing FS 2026 multinational exercise in Turkey, where participating forces are testing coordination in joint combat operations. The latest phase of the exercise focused on a coastal assault from the sea. Military personnel from Azerbaijan and other participating countries approached simulated enemy positions on high-speed boats before landing ashore under fire support. The units crossed engineering obstacles, neutralized defensive positions, and cleared the coastline for the landing of amphibious forces. This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay with us.